men should be brave, they should be strong, the strong and silent type. They should be rational, they don't feel weak.
They don't feel lonely.
Men don't feel lonely.
They don't feel pain.
They don't feel fear. They don't feel anxious or depressed.
They don't feel sad.
They don't feel scared.
They don't feel.
Of course we feel. We're human.
It's time we start allowing men to feel comfortable expressing and embracing the way that they feel.
About 2.5 years ago, in the space of about 6 months, I lost my job that I loved and gave me a huge amount of stability. I lost my girlfriend, she dumped me, who I loved a great deal, and I had no income. I was very scared and I was worried. And I also lost my agent for acting, so I had no auditions, no work coming through, and I felt very low, very sad, very anxious, very depressed, and I was terrified nothing would ever get better. And then as time went on, I healed. I got a new job, which was the best possible thing I could have done. I started doing meditation, I started doing more exercise, and I started dating again and meeting other people when I was ready. And then I got a new agent and I started making my own work. And I'm not fully better, I'm not fully happy, I'm not fixed, but it did get better and I thought it never would.
About 4 years ago, I was at a place in my life where I was struggling with depression. And I think when a lot of people hear the word depression, they think of sadness. But being depressed wasn't about sadness for me. It was about feeling empty. It was about feeling emotionless. And I remember even the most trivial, meaningless tasks would be really, really difficult to the point that they felt almost impossible. Getting myself out of bed in the morning felt like this mammoth task. Even doing things like tying my shoelaces. I remember one day just breaking down, trying to put on my shoes because that was the first step of my day and I just didn't feel like I could make it through that day. It took me quite a long time to get over it, but it was a friend who encouraged me to reach out for help and to get professional help and to get therapy and to get medication. It wasn't easy, but reaching out for help is what changed my life, and I feel like I'm past that time of my life now. I feel like I'm in a very good, solid place.
I suppose the darkest moment for me was when I was in my mid-20s, and I had just come out of a relationship which ended very suddenly and unexpectedly for me, and it sort of knocked me off balance, and then loads of other things just seemed to be happening around that time, and before I realised it, I was on a downward trajectory that I couldn't climb out of. I didn't realise that I was in a dark place at the time, and to see the success of everyone else around me was really hard. My family were doing great. I have a brother and a sister who have fantastic jobs, beautiful children, great marriages, blah, blah, blah. And I just wasn't there. And I felt a lot of pressure to have those things that haven't always been that important to me, but seem important to other people. I just found myself in this horrible place and couldn't get out of it. I was tired, lethargic, uninterested with things that were my passions beforehand. Friends commented on how I was not engaged with general conversation, topics of life. I started drinking more, which really didn't help either, because then it just caught me inside my own head. Even drinking alone, sometimes, it wasn't a good place to be at all. And until I had the opportunity to feel that I was ready to talk to someone, I was quite hostile to people that tried to ask me questions. But it took a very, very long time, years, for me to realise that I was not okay, and that even though things were out of my control, I could control who I spoke to and how I reacted with myself. And I suppose I'm in a better place now. And I'm just still occasionally climbing out of that hole. It's just not as deep anymore, and people have helped me get out of it.
The environment we're currently in at the moment, it's dark. This is what the epitome of depression is, in the respect of you're in this deep pit and you can't get out. It's just complete darkness crushing you. There's no light. If you know, the world has lost all of its colour completely. I'm unlucky in the aspect that I've got autism, so I don't understand how the world actually works. I don't perceive the world the same as other people do. I don't understand what people are saying to me, and they don't understand what I'm saying to them. And I do tend to wear a mask a lot of the times to hide what I'm truly feeling and how I'm truly going, because I'm so embarrassed about the things I can't do, or the things I can't say, or the way I feel, or my emotions. It's so difficult, it really is, just to be able to get that out to people and just say, look, I really do need help. I'm not lying, this is not a joke. I generally need help.
When my sort of issues started when I was younger, and they mainly were to do with being overweight and also being gay. And I was from a generation where, you know, it was frowned upon, and it made me feel alone and isolated and weird. When you're at high school, you just want to fit in and you just want to be a really cool kid, which I just didn't really feel. The information came out that I was gay way too early for me. I trusted someone with the information and they used it against me, which was really hard. And then I was very badly bullied for a long time, to the point of where I decided to leave the school. I felt anxious all the time. I worried all the time. I started to develop panic attacks to the point of where I couldn't leave my house. And I didn't want anyone to see my vulnerability, so I hid it with comedy and laughter. The funnier I was, or the more joyous I was, actually was when I was hurting the most. And eventually I went to my GP, which took years and years to build up the strength and courage to go and talk to someone. But they diagnosed my symptoms as a type of depression, which had obviously developed over the years. And I went to a counsellor who I saw for a couple of months. I got to a point where I wanted to be happy on the inside and on the outside. And I had these sessions with this amazing woman who helped make me realise that a lot of the pressures and a lot of the feelings that I was feeling, I'd put on myself. And it's really only the last couple of years that I've kind of gone, do you know what, I'm really happy with myself.
I had a moment where I was out of work and struggled to get work, and that was a bad time in my life. But the most recently was there was this realization that I wasn't getting any younger. So I'm now in my 40s. About a week before a birthday, that I'd just been feeling odd all day, and I'd been sat at home working, and I remember sort of finishing work for the day around 6 o'clock and getting up and just feeling like utterly devoid of motivation or any energy, and I just sat on my couch at home and just like lost it, and was like, I just felt completely empty and drained. And over the next few days, I had a moment every day where I felt like that, and remembering how I'd felt before when I had to go to my GP, my doctor, to say, I think I'm depressed. Shall I take antidepressants? And they were like, and they talked it through, and they were like, yes. And I realised that I was sort of having a reoccurrence of that. And so actually on my, was I 44 or was I 45? It was on my birthday. I know it's age related because I actually, when people, if you ask me right now how old I am, I would actually have to stop and think and work it from the mass of the year I was born, because I sort of have a mental block now. I'm kind of in denial on how old I am, because it all stems from not wanting to get older, because getting older just means that you'll just die one day. So I struggled, and I guess it was a classic midlife crisis moment when you're like, oh yeah, I'm not 25 anymore, I'm 45, and I didn't handle it at all well, and so I had to. There was a phase where it was horrible, and I in some ways I never really got through it. I'm just sort of, there's this slow acceptance, like with the shrug of your shoulders, that you realise that you're not 20-something anymore, or even 30-something, you're 40-something, and then, oh, you're 50-something, and then, as every year creeps up on you, you think, well, will I get cancer? Will I get a disease that can't be cured? Will something break that will never heal? And it's quite disturbing, and you just sort of have to sort of learn to get on with it. So I kind of have this sort of resignation of just getting old and eventually dying one day. But I'm not depressed about it anymore. I kind of go, yeah, that's going to happen. And the only thing you can do to get around it is just try and make the most of what you're doing whilst you can, whilst you are still alive and living life.
Quite a while back, I was in a dark situation. I'd call it what I called it was like the void, because there was no answers or explanations of why I was feeling that way. It was like an empty space. A good explanation is like limbo, where you're just in between this reality and another reality where there's nothingness. Like, I grew up being bullied, and there was other things like domestic violence and that, and then I kind of stored it all inside, and it was difficult. And then it came to a point where one day I couldn't deal with it constantly going on in my head. Because of this, I got diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and as you know, if you know, it basically you get flashbacks of your past experiences, and of course, most of my past experiences were, how can I put it, bad. And now and then, when I walked past something, it would probably trigger me into a flashback, and I'd just feel really low. I wouldn't know the meaning of life, the purpose. I'd question my existence. And the way I came out of that is by one day just going for a walk, listening to music, and I said to myself, I'm sick of feeling like this. I don't want to be this person anymore. Being alone, feeling all these sad emotions. Some of these emotions didn't even have a name, but they existed because they were so strong. I just didn't want to be in this world anymore. So one day I just said to myself, I need to break free of this cycle. So one thing I did start doing is I started YouTube because I felt I need to start small. I need to help myself with social anxiety. I need to help myself with getting out of this flow of being alone all the time and start socializing, even if it means socializing with a camera. And then from there, I signed up to an acting class, which helped me have more emotional control over my feelings, and yeah, from that I'm the guy I am today. And that's how I kind of got out of those situations. I just pushed through the barriers, even though there were some dark days. There's always light at the end of the tunnel.
It all started probably when I was around 16. I was still very young and I didn't really know how the world worked, or I didn't really know myself very well. I was worried about showing myself to people, I didn't really know how to come out of my shell. I was struggling with who I was as a person as well as my sexuality, and I always felt like I had to hide that. I had this constant anxiety of people finding out and being not okay with it, and I was always afraid that people would hate me, and there was no real reason to. I just felt that way. I guess I stopped interacting. Like, I didn't have many friends to start off with, but I didn't spend time with the friends that I did have. I was very reserved, and I could feel myself closing off from my friends as well as my family. I would spend most of my days just behind my computer in my bedroom, trying to ignore everything that was going on in the world. I used to get bullied in school, and I just didn't have the people that I could confide in, and so confiding in something that wasn't real or wasn't going to judge me was a lot easier. I spent so much time playing video games, and I spent so much time just watching videos online, and that was my escapism because I didn't know how to deal with what I was feeling properly, so I just ran away from it. So I started feeling better when I first spoke to someone. I told a group of my closest friends that I was gay, and slowly but surely I came out to more and more people, and I started feeling more comfortable in my own skin. These worries of not showing people who I really was and being afraid of what I was like, it just kind of melted away. I was finally able to express myself and be who I was openly. And especially when I came out to my family, this massive weight was lifted off my shoulders. It was such a relief because I could finally be myself all the time.
You know, Steve was a funny one. I mean, quite literally, he was a funny one. He was the loudest person in the room in every respect. He was such a big personality, always had a big smile on his face. You would never have guessed that inside he was fighting a battle. And I really, really wish that he was sat here right now, talking to you, manning up and telling you how he was feeling, telling you that his relationship had broken down and his job was a nightmare. and whatever else it was that he was feeling like he was struggling with, I wish he had just told somebody. He had so many friends and he seemed so positive. It was really hard to tell the difficult place that he was in. And now it's too late for any of us to do anything for him. And that feels awful. So please, don't suffer in silence. Choose to talk.